Well, we're great to be here at the Forward 50 site, live on location, and I'm extremely happy to have Minister Pakosta from Estonia with us. Minister, welcome.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Great to have you on the Let's Think Digital podcast. And Minister, you've got an interesting title in that you are Minister of both Justice and Digital Affairs as your portfolio, which, we were just talking before we started the interview, is an interesting combination. You recently started this role just in July of this year. Wondering if you can tell us a little bit about what's covered as part of your mandate and, maybe your kind of first impressions coming into this new role and this new ministry that combines both justice and digital into one.
Yes, we made a change in Estonia this summer, and we put together the classical Ministry of Justice, and then we had Ministry of Economics and Digital Affairs, but we took the Digital Affairs and put it together with Justice. So now we have a Ministry of Justice and Digital Affairs. The reason behind this, the change, was that basically very much of the digital state or the digital services is now based on legal issues. So when we want to go on with using AI, for example, we have to solve a lot of legal issues to protect basic rights and basic values that we have in our society. So, for example, the European Union AI Act, we see it as it enables us to offer even better services, even more personalized services. But to do this, we need new laws, we need new norms, and for this to be made in an innovative way. So the best solution was to put the digital side and the legal side together to help the innovation to go on in the way that really all the basic rights and values are protected.
I think it's a fascinating approach and philosophy because, traditionally when governments created digital ministries, they tended to be linked to either economic development or in some cases service delivery or policy organizations within the government. And I think you're right. Like one of the big challenges we have is how do we actually update the laws and the structures of the state? And I assume Estonia is probably one of the first places in the world to actually combine digital with justice into one portfolio.
One of the first, not the only one at the same time. But again, I fully understand it was a good decision from the beginning to have it connected with the economy side. But because most of the innovation comes from private companies, so it's fully understandable. But nowadays, especially with artificial intelligence, so the technology is so advanced. So to go on with public services, better public services for our citizens, we need to have changes also legally.
Yes.
Or we have to see how to safeguard the basic rights, the data rights. So, but at the same time, while securing the data rights and other basic rights, we have to ensure that there is room for innovation, and that is why we put these two things together.
I think that's one of the real challenges around digital in a lot of jurisdictions is, preserving data and ensuring that we can kind of ensure privacy and keep trust while still having that room for innovation. And I know, you just came off of the keynote address you gave here at Forward 50 at the conference that we're attending, and trust was a really big theme for you. And, if I kind of understood your message, it's that trust is an essential ingredient to having a digital state.
Absolutely. Trust is on what the whole digital state is built on. You can't have digital state without trust. People have to trust, and you have to design a system that can be really trusted to every detail. So that's fundamental. And again, talking about the legal side of this, it also has to build trust. We want to be different from China. That's absolutely clear. We are a democratic country. We want to be, and we are on the top of democratic countries. So it means that our laws, our justice system, everything has to ensure that people can trust the digital services, the digital state. to build trust, there are different possibilities. For example, in Estonia, we use the possibility that everybody who has given data to state, for example, medical data to your family doctor, or your children's data to a registry or whatever. So you can check very easily who has taken a look on your data. There is a very easy interface where you can go in and you actually see that this person at this time took a look on my, for example, car data in my car registry. And if that person did not have a legitimate interest for that, so this person gets punished. So everything is built up in the way that you can check every single move that is done with your data.
Wow. And I think that's one of the remarkable things around the digital infrastructure that Estonia has built. Because here, certainly in Canada, and I think in a lot of, North American, Western countries, we don't have that ability, right? It feels like it's a bit of this black hole that your data goes into. And certainly, if you wanted to request as a Canadian getting access to your data, it's paper forms, it's paper you're going to get back, takes multiple months. That idea of having a live dashboard that you can go into and in real time see your data, it really does kind of move that data privacy question, kind of flips it around, right? And essentially saying, let's put the burden back on the state to show that it's responsible using your data and do it in a very transparent type of way.
I fully agree with what you said, and I would like to underline that if you have a paper file, you actually don't know who looked at your paper file and who looked at your data. Yep. It can even be medical data. You don't know which people took a look on this paper file. The difference with the digital one is that you can be absolutely sure that you know every single person who looked on your data. We have had cases in hospitals, for example, where there has been a patient and there has been a friend of the patient working as a doctor. Maybe even the patient asked this friend to look at the data and give a second advice or something like that, but this is not allowed. So the doctor who did so had absolutely good intention, but no legal grounds to do this. And the doctor lost the job because it was not allowed to look on the data. So only the doctor who is responsible, or of course you can get a second opinion in Estonia as well, free of charge. So the second doctor has this right, but not your friends, even not your relatives. Do not, if they work as officials or if they technically might have the possibility to look at your data, they are not allowed.
Yeah, and it really does flip the script on this digital ID question, because politically there's a challenging debate I find here sometimes where people are worried about kind of Big Brother, right? And they're worried about government having that oversight. But I think the argument you're making is that in many ways these systems actually enable people to have more control over data and more transparency.
Absolutely, especially compared with paper. You never know who looked at your papers.
Exactly. So I want to talk a little bit about history and maybe go back to, Estonia's independence in 1991 and what the last, 3 to 4 decades have looked like, because I feel like the Estonian digital experience kind of looms large in the imagination here in Canada and a lot of places around the world, right? Estonia is very much looked at as a leader, has been for many years. I know in the most recent United Nations e-government rankings, Estonia came second in the world, has been consistently in the top 10 for many years. In contrast to here in Canada, as I think you heard this morning, we've been actually sliding down and are 47th in the world as of this last year in the UN rankings. And I know people have heard parts of Estonia. They know that it's quite advanced when it comes to digital government. But I'm wondering if you could share maybe a little bit about the journey and, what sparked Estonia to really make digital a priority and how that's evolved over the last few decades.
Okay, I have to go back a little bit more to history because that's important. We had independence. We were occupied by Russia and we had independence war in 1918 to 1920 and we won Russia. So a small state of Estonia won Russia and got its independence 1918. So we were an independent state, but then we were again reoccupied by Russia, and we regained our independence in 1991.
Right.
And then we really, after this period of occupation, we were more poor than we were before the Second World War because of the occupation.
Right.
So starting as an independent state, being very poor, we had to find ways to offer very good services to our citizens in a most effective way. But at the same time, everybody was angry with the corruption that was during the Russian occupation, and we wanted to do everything differently from Russia. So to be a transparent, no corruption state, and that is what we basically have achieved. So the digital state was built on to be fully transparent. That also helps to decline the corruption, and that also helps to build trust. Yep. So we were talking beforehand about this transparency about data, but it's not only this transparency. The digital state enables citizens to follow the budget, the expenses of the government, the expenses of the officials. So everything is made transparent. That is very, very important. And most important thing is that we really value freedoms. We really value our freedom as a country. We really value the freedoms of the citizens. And digital state enables us to be free in a democratic state. That's very important, most important for us.
And I think what's also interesting from what I know of the Estonian story on this is, if I can put it this way, there's been a political consensus around the importance of digital. Because I know there's been transitions in government, but it seems, consistently over the last 30 plus years, administrations have been pushing this forward.
You are close to be right. There is no total. So the far right is against it. So the far right is trying to build antitrust against government, and sometimes is using also the same bullet points that Russia is using, that governments cannot be trusted. So this antitrust movement is there.
Which we see everywhere in the world now.
What we see everywhere, but at the same time, the digital way of offering the services is so good. Everybody feels and sees how good it is for citizens.
Right.
And no politician, it's very hard to go out as a politician and say, we want to like to make you worse services. No one does that. So that has held the political constituencies that the services actually are good for people, and people see. We were talking about freedoms. So one thing is that you save so much time if the country is not bureaucratic and if it's digitalized, and people value the time. They can use this time with their families, with their hobbies, and it would be really, I think, very hard to turn it the other way around, because then it would be like, you have to take again a week to fill in your tax declaration, which you now can do with less than a minute.
Well, and once people see what good looks like, right? As you say, it's very tough to go back on that. So I'm wondering, because one of the things when it kind of, again, comes to the Estonian example around this, is there's often this debate about whether other countries can adopt it. Whether this is just a unique set of circumstances. I mean, Estonia, obviously, number one, as you mentioned, had this unique moment where it regained independence, essentially got to rebuild the state in a lot of ways. Small country, about the population of Ottawa, geographically relatively small and concentrated in the capital. And there's this question of, can you take the Estonian model and export it elsewhere, or does every country have to have its own unique path? And I'm curious your thoughts about that.
Yeah, you have a Think Digital podcast. So you know very well that digital applications, whatever, are scalable. So you can use it everywhere. There is no culture barrier or language barrier or whatever barrier. Yes, the digital state is scalable. It has been actually the basic architecture, which is called X-Road. X-Road is the extremely secure architecture that enables interoperability of services in an extremely secure way, so that it's not being hacked. It can be trusted by the citizens, and this infrastructure is scalable. It has been used already for by many other countries. So it's approximately 25 countries already using this. And also it can be used by, for example, bigger corporations, because where you need interoperability in an extremely secure way.
Yep.
So basically, yes, it can be used also in Canada. So if Canada decides that this is the way to go, there has been actually interest. So I really hope that Canada, which is also a country topping at the democracy scores,
Yep.
And we share the basic values, which is just wonderful, I think. So I would really suggest that you take this X-Road, and then it would be very easy, service by service, to build this onto this extremely secure architecture.
And you emphasize the security side of it, and obviously I assume
That's obvious.
Yeah, and I mean every country in the world is thinking about cybersecurity, but I imagine in Estonia's case, given your geopolitical situation, security must be at the core of how you've been approaching digital.
Yeah, it's the absolute hygiene. So it's the security is the baseline we start everything with, and we really. For example, we have e-voting, internet voting. So Russia has tried to hack it for 20 years, but they have never been successful, and they never will be, because I think we are really on top of the world, together with Canada, by the way, with cybersecurity efficiency and the knowledge around this. So we really will go on keeping it safe.
Yep.
That's the main thing.
I also wanted to ask you about procurement and how you work with the private sector, because in your talk you gave at Forward 50, you were mentioning that, Estonia's got a bit of a unique model in that, it's a small state, and I assume this is part of it. You've actually, in some ways, outsourced a lot of the technology development, right? A lot of the technology that Estonia is using in government, if I understood correctly, is not built internally by the public service, it's built by the private sector. But you've also ensured a lot of competition to make sure that you don't get stuck with, one big vendor. I'm wondering if you can kind of speak to that approach of how you work with the private sector and what that balance between government and private looks like.
First, free competition enables innovation, and you can't go on without innovation. So competition is extremely valuable for enabling innovation, and the role of the government in Estonia has been to set up the basic guidelines and, of course, to set up the basic standards as well, especially the security standards. But then all the innovation has came from private sector, because I think this is also global, that governments do good or not so good work,
yes,
but they are never on topping at the innovative innovation level.
Yep.
So the innovation comes from private initiatives, and how Estonia solved it was that we decided from the very beginning that we shouldn't be dependent from one particular company. So it meant that we divided all the tasks into smaller bits, so that there should be always several companies competing with each other and building just a part of one service, so that if something happens with the company, or if there will be a problem, there could be another company who takes over, so that none of our services is dependent on just one company. That enables us to have also better prices, by the way, because you have the competition.
Yep.
And you get really the best from the market. And I would underline the most important thing, that is to be open for the innovation, from the government side. So at the same time, enabling that the security levels are always fulfilled. So no public procurement without extremely hard security norms.
And I'm wondering as well, about attracting talent to be able to work on these digital government projects. I mean, both within the public service, but from the private sector, again, as a relatively small jurisdiction, has there been strategies to kind of build talent within Estonia? Do you pull from the broader European Union and other neighboring countries as well?
We have actually a special migration tool for IT people. And we also have several international curriculums at our universities with very positive examples. For example, the founder of GLIA, which also has an office in Vancouver. It is an example of a student who came to study in Estonia, started a startup. So by the way, Estonia is the top country in the world having startups per capita.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So,
including some people like Skype, for example, which is an Estonian company,
and
probably
Wise, etc.
Wise as well.
Yeah.
Yes. Very. And is that that kind of entrepreneurship that you've seen in Estonia, is that kind of come natural to Estonians, or is this part of government also putting incentives in place to allow for startups?
I think the answer is very simple. It takes less than a minute to start a company in Estonia.
Wow.
So because it's again all digitalized. So and you can even be an e-resident to Estonia. So if you are, for example, in Canada, so you can be first an e-resident in Estonia, then you get access to all these digital services, and you can start a company in European Union. So, and Estonia would be very happy for that because we get a bit of tax money then.
Absolutely. I actually have a couple of colleagues I know who have become e-residents of Estonia through that process, and it's incredibly simple to do and easy to do as well.
Yes, and you get full access to digital services. It's not an identity card. It's a good way to get, for example, if you are interested in starting a company at European Union, so that would be the easiest road ever.
Very interesting. I want to maybe, as we kind of come to the end of our conversation, look a little bit forward. And, we talked a bit about the history of the last few decades of Estonia's journey. I'm wondering in the years ahead, what are you looking forward to, or what do you think are kind of the next most important milestones for Estonia as it continues its digital journey?
Of course, I have to again underline cybersecurity because as a pity, also the evil side is developing. So this remains as the top issue to ensure that we are before the evil ones. So. But to go to the services, as all the services already are digitalized or digital, then the next step is to personalize the services using the data and again making it in this way that citizens are real winners, that they get even more services that are personalized, that match their needs, and that the services come to people in an even more smooth way so that you don't have to apply to anything, basically. So that's the road we are looking for.
I've heard one of your former colleagues, Sim Sakut, former CIO from Estonia, talk about this idea that the best service interaction is no service interaction at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So the best government is the government you don't notice at all.
Absolutely. And do you, at the beginning of our conversation, we talked a little bit about artificial intelligence. Do you think AI is going to be part of that? I mean, do you envision a future where AI essentially plays that intermediary role between government and citizens?
We adapted new guidelines for Estonian government in spring and for AI. And that includes that we want to become the government in the world that uses most of the AI. So we see it as an enabler very clearly. And now again, I have to underline that, yes, the laws have to protect the basic rights and basic values at the same time. But still, we see it as an enabler. And we see that it can do the government even more efficient because we need the tax money for ammunition against Russia if they ever want to make any step on Estonian territory. So we will demolish them on their own territory. So that's what we are going to use our taxpayers' money, not for bureaucracy or other things. And here is where the AI comes us to help to make the public sector even more efficient.
Right. And that real, obviously, because of that external threat, that real drive to focus on efficiency of the state and to make it, as you said, kind of as streamlined as possible so that you can be as robust as possible from your international perspective.
Absolutely. And of course, we are sure that any attack will not happen. We have to be ready to show that it is very costly to do so. But at the same time, we build a prosperous, free society where people are happy, free, rich, and satisfied with the services, where people can live countryside, in the city, where they get all the services, whether they are children or elderly. So, and the democracy is served on a highest level. So that's the spirit.
Absolutely. Minister, we're really happy you had a chance to come visit Canada and be able to spend some time here in Ottawa. I'm going to give the final word to you. Any kind of closing thoughts, as a lot of our listening audience is coming from Canada. We're thinking about how to modernize our digital government approach in this country. Any kind of final lessons or advice that you would give for our listeners here as to what they should take away from the Estonian experience and try to apply here in Canada?
If that's government side, I think you should start from the basic architecture, that you have the interoperability system like the X-Road we have in Estonia, and that is scalable to Canada. So you need this first. If you are a citizen, so I think it's good for your tax percentage that you support the digital developments, because then you have to pay less taxes.
That's always a strong selling point.
And you get better services, and you get better services at the same time.
I mean, that is the dream: lower taxes and better services.
Yeah, and of course, I invite everybody to visit also physically Estonia.
I had a chance to go in 2016. It was a beautiful country. I look forward to coming back sometime.
Thank you so much for your good words.
Well, and thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate having you on the podcast.
Thank you so much.